It's no coincidence that you're reading these words right now. As this message finds its way into your awareness, something profound is shifting in the quiet, unseen architecture of your soul. If you've been lying awake at night, stomach churning as you replay a conversation for the 17th time, agonizing over whether you said the right thing, wondering if they noticed the tiny imperfection in your delivery, this message is specifically for you. There's a type of woman Carl Jung warned about, a woman who has been so good, so careful, so absolutely flawless in her execution of life that she has become a prisoner of her own excellence. And if your hands are trembling slightly as you hear this, if there's a tightness in your chest that you can't quite explain, or body already knows what your mind is about to discover, you are standing at the threshold of a revelation that will change everything. You have been perfect your entire life, and it is slowly killing you. Not the dramatic kind of death that anyone would notice, the quiet kind, the soul-level kind, the kind where you wake up at 47 or 52 or 61 and realize you don't actually know who you are beneath the armor of achievement. You've spent decades building a life of immaculate execution, every email proofread 7 times. Every project delivered ahead of deadline, every relationship managed with surgical precision, and somewhere along the way, you stopped being a person and became a performance. The fracture isn't that you're failing, the fracture is that you're succeeding brilliantly at a life that is suffocating your soul. And the guilt of that knowing, the absolute terror that maybe, just maybe, all this perfection has been in service of an identity that was never truly yours, keeping you awake at 3 a.m., chest tight, breath shallow, wondering if this is all there is. You can't unsee what you've seen. The life you built with such meticulous care is not wrong. It's just no longer big enough to contain the woman you're becoming. Carl Jung called this the shadow, those parts of yourself you exiled in order to be acceptable, lovable, successful. Your shadow isn't evil. It's not your darkness in the sinister sense. It's your power, your spontaneity, your aliveness, everything you had to reject in order to become perfect. And what Jung understood that most of us miss is this. The shadow doesn't disappear when you reject it. It goes underground where it waits, gathering strength until the day it demands to be integrated. Perfectionism is not a personality trait, it's a survival strategy. You learned very early, perhaps from a critical parent, perhaps from a chaotic childhood, perhaps from a culture that told you a woman's worth is measured by her flawlessness, that mistakes were dangerous, that being anything less than perfect meant being unlovable, unsafe, unseen, so you became immaculate. And in doing so, you exiled entire territories of your being. Jung called the process of reclaiming these exiled parts individuation, the sacred, often brutal work of becoming fully yourself, not who you were taught to be. And here's what the depth psychology traditions understand that our achievement-obsessed culture does not. Your perfectionism is not the problem. Your perfectionism is the cage around your power. And the woman on the other side of this integration is not less than you. She is more. She is whole. She is sovereign. Picture this. You're sitting at your desk, cursor blinking over an email you've been drafting for 45 minutes. It's a simple message for sentences, maybe 5, but you can't send it. Because what if the tone is wrong? What if they misinterpret that 3rd sentence? What if you sound too assertive, or not assertive enough, or somehow reveal through your word choice that you are fundamentally inadequate? So you read it again? You adjust a comma? You swap happy for pleased. You delete the entire thing and start over. You Google whether you should use an exclamation point or a period after thanks, and somewhere in the 14th revision, you feel it, that familiar wave of nausea, the tightening in your throat. The sense that you are somehow failing at the most basic human task of communication. This is not about the email. This has never been about the email. This is about the bone-deep belief that you are one mistake away from being exposed as the fraud you secretly fear you are. That your value as a human being is contingent on your absolute, unwavering excellence. That if you are anything less than perfect, you are nothing. And so you hit send finally. mercifully, and then spend the next 3 hours compulsively checking your inbox, stomach in knots, convinced you've ruined everything. Again, this is the cage. And you've been living in it so long you forgot it was a cage at all. Here's what Jung knew, what Marion Woodman spent her life teaching, what you're about to discover. Your perfectionism is not a flaw. It's a fortress built around your most vital power. What you've been calling your anxiety is actually your aliveness trying to break free. What you've been pathologizing as overthinking is your intuition trying to speak through the best static of other people's expectations. What you've been medicating, managing, and trying to fix is not a disease. It's your soul's rebellion against a life that has become too small. The shadow, those parts you exiled to be perfect, is not your enemy. It is the repository of everything you need to become whole. Your misanthropy, your spontaneity, your anger, your boundaries, your creative wildness, your permission to be beautifully, imperfectly, gloriously human. All of it, waiting in the dark, waiting for you to turn around and say, "I see you, I'm ready, come home." This is not a breakdown, this is a retrieval mission, and the woman you're becoming is not less than the one you've been. She is the one you've always been. Beneath the performance, she is sovereign. She is whole, she is free. And perfectionism is the bouncer at the door of your own soul, and it's time to fire him. Sign number 1, terror of mistakes reveals control wounds. The first hidden sign that your perfectionism is exiled power. You experience mistakes not as learning opportunities, but as existential threats. When you make an error, send an email with a typo, arrive 5 minutes late, burn the dinner, forget someone's name, your nervous system doesn't register a minor inconvenience. It registers mortal danger. Your heart races, your palms sweat. Your mind spirals into catastrophic scenarios where this one small misstep unravels your entire life. You are not overreacting. You are having a trauma response. Because somewhere in your history, perfection became your only guarantee of safety. Perhaps you grew up in a home where love was conditional on performance. Perhaps you learned that mistakes were met with criticism, withdrawal, or rage. Perhaps you survived chaos by becoming the one thing you could control, immaculate, impeccable, beyond reproach. And that strategy worked, until it didn't. Jung would say you developed what's called a complex and emotionally charged pattern that operates autonomously in your psyche. Your perfectionism complex isn't you. It's a protective mechanism that took over so completely you forgot you were the one in charge. And every time you make a mistake, that complex doesn't see a learning moment. It sees proof that you are about to lose everything. Here's what your body knows and your mind is learning. The terror of mistakes is not about the mistake itself. It's about the wound beneath it, the wound that says you are only lovable when you are flawless. And the exiled power, it's the part of you that knows your worth is not contingent on your performance. The part that can fail spectacularly and still take up space in the world. The part that is allowed to be human. That power is not gone. It's been in exile, waiting for you to realize that the only thing standing between you and your freedom is your belief that love is something you have to earn. Sign number 2. Criticism feels like annihilation. The second hidden sign, when someone offers even the gentlest critique, your entire sense of self collapses. You hear this report needs a small revision, and what lands in your body is you are fundamentally inadequate. You receive, could you try a different approach next time? And what registers is, you have failed at being human. This is not sensitivity. This is a sign that you have fused your identity with your output, that you have confused your worth as a person with your performance as a producer. Jung called this identification when you so thoroughly merge with a role or expectation that you lose access to the self beneath it. You are not your accomplishments. You are not your productivity. You are not the sum total of other people's approval. But somewhere along the way, you learned that you were. And now, criticism doesn't feel like feedback about your work. It feels like annihilation of your being. This is what happens when perfectionism becomes your primary identity. You build an entire sense of self on the foundation of external validation. And when that validation is withheld, or worse, when criticism arrives, the whole structure threatens to collapse. Your nervous system interprets feedback not as information, but as rejection. Not as this needs adjustment, but as you are unworthy. The body knows when criticism arrives. Notice what happens. Does your chest tighten? Does your throat close? Do you feel heat rising up your neck, tears threatening, a desperate urge to defend or explain or disappear? This is your nervous system confusing psychological feedback with physical danger. This is what happens when your worth has been outsourced to other people's opinions. And here's the exiled power. The part of you that can hear feedback without fragmenting, the part that knows criticism of your work is not condemnation of your soul, the part that can say, "Thank you for that input," and then decide from a place of sovereignty whether or not to integrate it. That discernment, that groundedness, that unshakable sense of self. That's your power. And it's been waiting in the shadow for you to stop performing long enough to remember. You are not what you produce. You are the producer. You are the artist. You are the whole, magnificent, imperfect human being who gets to create without staking your entire identity on the outcome. Sign number 3, can't start unless conditions are perfect. The third hidden sign that your perfectionism is exiled power. You cannot begin until everything is exactly right. You want to write, but first you need the perfect desk setup, the perfect time of day, the perfect amount of coffee, the perfect blank document staring back at you with no distractions, no interruptions, no excuses. You want to launch that business, but first you need more training, more credentials, more clarity, more certainty that you won't fail. You want to have that difficult conversation, but first you need to script every word, anticipate every response, ensure there's zero possibility of conflict or misunderstanding. So you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and the project never starts. The business never launches. The conversation never happens. Because the conditions are never perfect. And perfectionism gets to win, again not by making you perfect, but by keeping you paralyzed. Jung would recognize this as the negative function of the inner critic, the voice that masquerades as protection, but is actually prevention. It tells you that you're just being responsible, just being thorough, just making sure you're ready. But what it's really doing is ensuring you never have to risk being seen in your imperfection. Because if you never start, you can never fail. And if you never fail, you can maintain the illusion that you are, in fact, perfect, just not ready yet. This is the most insidious form of perfectionism. It doesn't drive you to exhaustion through overwork. It drives you to stagnation through procrastination. It keeps your gifts locked away, your creativity unexpressed, your voice unheard, all in the name of waiting for conditions that will never arrive. The body knows. Notice the sensation when you think about starting that thing you've been avoiding. Is there heaviness in your chest? A vague sense of dread? A sudden urgent need to do literally anything else? Clean the kitchen, check email, reorganize your closet. This is resistance. And resistance is not evidence that you're not ready. It's evidence that you're about to do something that matters. Something that requires you to be imperfect, visible, vulnerable. And the exiled power, it's the part of you that can begin badly, that can start before you're ready, that can create a messy first draft, a flawed first attempt, a version 0.1 that is laughably imperfect and still valuable. That power is your creative life force. That power is your agency. That power says, I don't need ideal conditions to take up space in the world. I am allowed to be a beginner. I am allowed to be in process. I am allowed to be imperfectly, beautifully, courageously human. And that power has been in exile because perfectionism convinced you that anything less than flawless is not worth doing. It lied. Sign number 4, envy of messy people's freedom, the fourth hidden sign. You feel a sharp, secret envy when you watch people who seem unbothered by their imperfection. You see someone post on social media without agonizing over every word. Someone who shows up late without spiraling into shame. Someone who asks a stupid question in a meeting without melting into the floor. Someone who wears mismatched socks, sends type-riddled texts, leaves dishes in the sink, and still moves through the world with baffling confidence. And something in you clenches. You tell yourself you're judgmental. You tell yourself they're irresponsible. But underneath the judgment is something else entirely. Longing, bone-deep, aching longing for the freedom they seem to inhabit. The freedom to be imperfect and still take up space. The freedom to fail and not internalize it as identity. The freedom to be human without constantly monitoring, managing, perfecting every single aspect of their existence. Jung would say this envy is a projection you are seeing in others, the disowned parts of yourself. The parts you exiled in order to be good, acceptable, perfect. Their messiness isn't actually threatening, it's a mirror. It's showing you the spontaneity, the ease, the aliveness you locked away when you decided that perfection was your only path to belonging. Marion Woodman would call this the exiled body, the part of you that wants to dance without choreography, speak without scripts, create without plans, the part that knows how to be, not just how to perform. And when you see someone embodying that freedom, your nervous system doesn't feel inspiration, it feels grief. Grief for all the years you've spent in the cage. Grief for the woman you might have been if you'd known you were allowed to be imperfect. The exiled power here is massive. It's your permission to be ordinary, to be flawed, to be gloriously, unspectacularly human. That's not weakness. That's liberation. And every time you feel that stab of envy, you're actually receiving an invitation. What if I could have that too? What if I didn't have to earn my existence through excellence? What if I could just ... be? That question is the beginning of your freedom. Sign number 5. Overwork to avoid judgment. The fifth hidden sign that your perfectionism is exiled power. You work yourself to the edge of collapse not because you love the work, but because you're terrified of what people will think if you don't. You say yes to every request. You volunteer for the extra project. You stay late, come in early, work weekends, answer emails at 11 p.m. Not because you're passionate, because you're afraid. Afraid that if you set a boundary, they'll realize you're not actually indispensable. Afraid that if you rest, someone will notice you're not producing. Afraid that if you stop hustling for 60 seconds, the entire facade will crumble and everyone will see the truth. You're just a regular human pretending to be superhuman. This is not work ethic. This is terror management. And your body is keeping score. The chronic exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, the digestive issues, the tension headaches, the insomnia, the way your nervous system can't remember how to rest because rest feels like failure. Jung would recognize this as the inflation of the persona. The mask you wear for the world has become so elaborate, so demanding, that you've lost contact with the self beneath it. You are not working hard because you want to. You are working hard because your worth has been fused with your productivity. And if you stop producing, you fear you will cease to exist. The exiled power here is your no, your capacity for rest. Your right to be unavailable, insufficient, mediocre. The part of you that knows your value is not contingent on your output. The part that can disappoint people and still sleep at night. The part that trusts you are enough, exactly as you are, without adding one more accomplishment to the pile. That power is not lost. It's been buried under decades of conditioning that told you love is something you earn through sacrifice. And every time you work yourself to exhaustion to avoid judgment, you are choosing the cage over your freedom. Sign number 6. Relationships suffer. You expect perfection from others. The sixth hidden sign. Your perfectionism doesn't just imprison you, it suffocates your relationships. You hold other people to the same impossible standards you hold yourself. When your partner forgets to take out the trash, you feel betrayed. When your friend cancels plans, you interpret it as rejection. When your child brings home a B instead of an A, you feel a creeping anxiety that somehow you've failed. Not because you're cruel, because you genuinely cannot tolerate imperfection, in yourself, and not in the people you love. This is what happens when perfectionism becomes the organizing principle of your entire psyche. You don't just apply it to yourself, you apply it to everyone. And relationships, real, intimate, messy relationships require something perfectionism cannot abide. Human imperfection, mistakes, miscommunication, disappointment, conflict, growth. All the beautiful, excruciating ways to imperfect people learn to love each other. But if you're operating from a perfectionism wound, none of that feels beautiful. It feels threatening. Because on some unconscious level, you've decided that imperfection equals unworthiness. And if the people you love are imperfect, then maybe they're not worthy. Or worse, maybe you're not worthy of being loved by imperfect people. Maybe you need to keep fixing, managing, controlling everyone around you so that your entire ecosystem remains safe, predictable, flawless. Jung would call this shadow projection. You are placing your own disowned imperfection onto others and then trying to control it externally. You can't tolerate your own humanity, so you can't tolerate theirs. And the result is isolation, loneliness, the bone-deep ache of connection that never quite reaches the vulnerability required for true intimacy. The exiled power here is your capacity for grace, for forgiveness, for accepting others exactly as they are, flawed, inconsistent, human. And that capacity begins with extending it to yourself. The part of you that can hold space for imperfection, yours, and theirs is the part that knows love is not contingent on performance. That belonging is not something you earn. That relationships are not projects to be managed, but mysteries to be inhabited. That power is waiting. And it will transform not just how you see yourself, but how you love others. Sign number 7. Creative projects abandoned won't be perfect. The 7th hidden sign that your perfectionism is exiled power. You have a graveyard of unfinished creative projects because none of them were good enough. The novel that's been in draft form for 6 years. The painting you started and never showed anyone. The business idea you researched obsessively but never launched. The song you wrote in your 20s that's still sitting in a drawer. Not because you lost interest, because they weren't perfect. And if they weren't perfect, what was the point? This is perhaps the cruelest theft of perfectionism. It robs you of your creative life, because creativity, by its very nature, is imperfect, it's experimental, it's messy. It requires you to make something that doesn't exist yet, which means it requires you to be wrong repeatedly until you stumble into something right, and perfectionism cannot tolerate that process. So you abandon, or worse, you never start. And the excuse is always the same. I'll come back to it when I have more time, more skill, more certainty. But what you're really saying is, I'll come back to it when I can guarantee it will be perfect. Which is another way of saying, I'll never come back to it at all. Clarissa Pinkola Estes writes about the creative life as a wild, untamed force that cannot be controlled or perfected, only honored and followed. But if you've been conditioned to believe that your value lies in flawless execution, creativity feels too dangerous, too vulnerable, too exposing, because creative work is always, always a revelation of your imperfect humanity. And if you've exiled your imperfection, you've exiled your creative soul. The body knows when you think about that abandoned project, what happens? Is there a tightness in your chest? A heaviness? A flood of shame? This is not evidence that the project wasn't worthy. It's evidence that you have confused creative expression with performance. That you've forgotten creativity is not about producing perfect things, it's about being alive. The exiled power here is your creative wild. The part of you that makes art for the sake of making art. That sings off-key, that writes bad first drafts, that experiments and fails and tries again. Not because the outcome will be perfect, but because the process is your birthright. That power is your aliveness. and it's been waiting in the shadow for you to remember. You don't create to be perfect. You create to be human. Sign number 8. Physical illness from chronic stress. The 8th hidden sign. Your body is breaking down under the weight of your perfectionism. The chronic migraines, the digestive issues that no doctor can quite figure out. The autoimmune condition that appeared out of nowhere. The insomnia, the anxiety that manifests as chest tightness, shallow breathing, a constant low-grade sense of dread. The exhaustion that sleep doesn't touch, the back pain, the jaw tension from grinding your teeth at night. Your body is not betraying you. Your body is trying to save you. Perfectionism creates chronic stress, and chronic stress creates chronic illness. Your nervous system was not designed to be in a constant state of hypervigilance. It was designed to oscillate between activation and rest. But when you are living in perfectionism, there is no rest. There is only the relentless vigilance of monitoring every word, every action, every interaction for possible mistakes. Your body is perpetually braced for danger. And over time, that takes a toll. The research is unequivocal. Perfectionism is linked to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, and early mortality. Not because perfectionism is a personality quirk, because perfectionism is a chronic stressor that dysregulates your entire system. Your body is not the problem. Your nervous system's belief that it must be perfect to survive that is the problem. Jung understood that the psyche and soma are not separate. What you exile psychologically will eventually express somatically. Your body is the keeper of your shadow, and when you refuse to acknowledge your imperfection, your humanity, your limits, your body will force the conversation through pain, through illness, through exhaustion so profound it finally makes you stop. The exiled power here is your body's wisdom, the part of you that knows when to rest, when to say no, when to honor your limits instead of overriding them in service of an impossible standard. Your body is not your enemy, it's your ally, and it's been trying to tell you for years. You are not a machine, you are a human being, and human beings are allowed to be imperfect, limited, tired, and still worthy of care. That power is your somatic sovereignty, and reclaiming it might literally save your life. Sign number 9, secret belief you're fundamentally flawed. The 9th and deepest hidden sign that your perfectionism is exiled power underneath all of it. You carry a secret, unshakable belief that you are fundamentally flawed. You don't say this out loud, you might not even consciously acknowledge it. But it's there, humming beneath every action, every decision, every interaction. I am not enough, and if I am not enough, I must become perfect to compensate. Perfectionism is not the pursuit of excellence. It's the armor you wear to hide the wound. This is the core of the perfectionism complex. The belief that you're essential, self-messy, flawed, imperfect is unacceptable. That who you are at your most unguarded is somehow wrong. So you build a persona of flawless execution. You perform perfection so convincingly that maybe, just maybe, no one will notice the truth. You believe you are broken. Jung called this the core wound of individuation, the split between who you are and who you believe you must be to deserve love. And until you heal that wound, perfectionism will always be your strategy. Because if you can just be good enough, productive enough, flawless enough, then maybe you can finally earn the belonging you fear you don't deserve. But here's the devastating irony. No amount of perfection will ever heal the wound of unworthiness, because the wound is not based in reality. It's based in a lie you internalized so young you thought it was truth. The lie that says you are only lovable if you are perfect. And the only way to dismantle that lie is to do the one thing perfectionism forbids: be imperfect and be loved anyway. Be flawed and be worthy anyway. Be human and belong anyway. The exiled power here is your inherent worth, not the worth you earn through performance, the worth you possess simply because you exist. The part of you that knows you were whole before you achieved a single thing. The part that remembers you did not come into this world to be perfect. You came into this world to be you. That power is your essence, and it's been waiting your whole life for you to come home. Your body has been trying to tell you this for years. The tightness in your chest when you're about to send an imperfect email, the nausea when someone offers feedback, the jaw tension you wake up with evidence of the battle you've been fighting in your sleep, the chronic fatigue that has nothing to do with how much you've slept and everything to do with how long you've been holding your breath, waiting to finally be good enough, the digestive issues, the tension headaches, the lower back pain from carrying the weight of everyone's expectations, the insomnia, because your mind cannot rest when it's still cataloging every mistake you made today and strategizing how to be perfect tomorrow. The autoimmune responses, your body quite literally attacking itself because it has internalized the belief that you are a threat. These are not random symptoms, they are messages. Your body is the oracle, and it has been speaking in the only language it knows: sensation. Pain is information, exhaustion is information, illness is information. And the information is this: you cannot sustain a life built on the foundation of perfectionism. It is killing you, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. Jung understood that the body is the unconscious made visible. What you refuse to feel psychologically, you will eventually feel somatically. Your perfectionism is not a mental construct, it's a full body experience. And your body-wise, patient, loyal, has been waiting for you to listen. So listen now. Place your hand on your heart. Feel the tightness there. That's not weakness. That's the part of you that has been holding everything together while you figured this out. Thank it, and then ask it. What do you need? Not what do you need to do. What do you need to release? Your body already knows the answer. This is the death of the perfectionist and the birth of the integrated creator. Not through force, not through rebellion. Through the slow, sacred work of retrieving every part of yourself you exiled in order to be acceptable. The messy parts, the angry parts, the parts that fail, that falter, that say the wrong thing and need 3 tries to get it right. The parts that are beautifully, undeniably, imperfectly human. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you were before the world taught you that love is contingent on performance. Before you learned that mistakes were dangerous. Before you built the cage and called it safety. Jung called this process individuation, the journey from who you were told to be to who you actually are. And it requires you to integrate your shadow, to turn toward the parts of yourself you've been running from and say, you are welcome here. You belong to me. Come home. The integrated creator is not perfect. She is whole. She does not produce flawlessly. She creates courageously. She does not wait for ideal conditions. She begins anyway. She does not measure her worth by external validation. She knows her value is inherent. She is not afraid of mistakes. She understands they are the currency of growth. She is not imprisoned by other people's expectations. She is sovereign. This is your archetype. This is who you are becoming. And every time you choose imperfection over paralysis, vulnerability over performance, humanity over the illusion of control, you are stepping into her. The culture will tell you that perfectionism is ambition, that it's excellence, that it's what separates the winners from the losers. Do not believe it. Perfectionism is not excellence. It's fear masquerading as standards. It's trauma masquerading as work ethic. It's the wound that says you are only lovable if you are flawless, and it is a lie designed to keep you small, exhausted, and endlessly striving for an impossible ideal. The culture profits from your perfectionism. It needs you to believe that you are not enough, so that you keep consuming, achieving, performing, producing. It needs you to believe that rest is laziness, that boundaries are selfish, that your worth is measured by your output. Because a woman who knows she is inherently valuable, who knows her worth is not contingent on her performances, a woman who cannot be controlled. Jung knew this. Marion Woodman knew this. Every depth psychologist who has looked honestly at the human psyche knows this. Individuation is a revolutionary act. Becoming yourself fully, imperfectly, unapologetically is a threat to every system that depends on your compliance. So when they tell you that perfectionism is a virtue, remember, it's a cage. And the woman on the other side of that cage is not less than you. She is free. So how do you begin to reclaim your exiled power? How do you dismantle perfectionism and integrate your shadow? Here are 3 practices to begin the work. Practice 1, the B- work challenge this week. Do anything at a B- level and do not fix it. Send the email with the typo, post the social media caption without editing it 17 times. Submit the project that's good enough instead of perfect. And then notice what happens in your body. The anxiety, the fear, the voice that says you've ruined everything. That voice is the perfectionism complex. And every time you act against it, you weaken its grip. You are teaching your nervous system a new truth. I can be imperfect, and the world does not end. I can be flawed and still be worthy. Practice 2. Shadow dialogue with your inner critic. Sit down with a journal and write a letter to your inner critic. Ask it, what are you protecting me from? What do you fear will happen if I'm not perfect? Listen to the answer. The inner critic is not your enemy. It's a part of you that learns to keep you safe through perfection. Thank it for its service. And then gently, firmly tell it, I've got this now. You can rest. Practice 3. Somatic check-in for perfection triggers throughout your day. When you notice the perfectionism activation, the compulsive editing, the paralysis before starting, the anxiety after a white pause, place one hand on your heart and one on your belly. Ask your body, what am I really afraid of? Not what do I need to fix, but what am I afraid will happen if I don't fix this? The answer will reveal the wound beneath the perfectionism. And awareness is the first step toward integration. These are not quick fixes. Integration is slow work. It's the work of a lifetime. But every small act of imperfection is an act of reclamation. Every time you choose your humanity over the performance, you are calling your power home. So if this video found you today, understand, it's not random. You are standing at a threshold. Carl Jung called it the negrado, the darkening before the transformation. The moment when everything you've built on the foundation of perfection begins to crack. Not because you're failing, but because your soul is too big for the cage anymore. And while the culture around you will try to pathologize this passage, will tell you that you're having a breakdown, that you need to get it together, that you should be grateful for the perfect life you've built, you now know the truth. This is not a breakdown. This is a homecoming. The woman you are becoming is not perfect. She is whole. She is not flawless. She is free. She is not performing. She is present. And she is not earning her worth through endless achievement. She knows her worth is her birthright. Your perfectionism was never about excellence. It was about survival. And you survived. But you are no longer that child who needed to be perfect to be safe. You are a woman standing at the threshold of your own power. And that power, messy, imperfect, gloriously human, has been waiting your entire life for you to turn around and claim it. This is your initiation. This is your individuation. This is your liberation. And the woman on the other side, she is sovereign. If this resonated, I need you to do something. In the comments, share one imperfect thing you're going to do this week. Not for me. For the woman who is scrolling at 2 a.m., convinced she's the only one struggling with this. Your courage gives her permission, right? I'm going to send the email without proofreading it 17 times, or I'm going to post the thing even though it's not polished, or simply, I'm choosing B- work this week. Claim your archetype, claim your humanity. And if you're in the thick of this shadow work right now, if you're in the darkest part of the journey, comment shadow walker. Let's build the tribe of women who are brave enough to integrate their power instead of performing their perfection. Subscribe for weekly depth psychology that speaks to your soul, not your productivity. Hit the notification bell if you want these revelations delivered every time we go deeper. And if you need more support on this journey, check out the Shadow Integration playlist. It's specifically for women reclaiming the parts they exiled to be good. You are not alone in this work. And you are not broken. You are becoming whole. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this sacred work. I'll see you in the next video.